This scenario describes a state of digital paralysis that many experience as morning inertia. The moment you wake up, your brain is transitioning from low frequency waves, theta, alpha, to an alert state, beta. By reaching for your phone immediately, you subject your mind to a dopamine tsunami before it has even regained its footing. During that just 1 minute that turns into 40, the endless stream of content depletes your reward center before your day has truly begun. This process disrupts your cortisol and dopamine balance, trapping your mind in a state of hyperarousal before it can adapt to the physical world. The heavy exhaustion you feel afterward is not muscle weakness. It is your brain collapsing under the weight of an artificial data bombardment.
What you are experiencing is not a lack of willpower or laziness, but a biological defense mechanism. Evolutionarily, our brains were never designed to process such intense, rapid, and artificial stimuli simultaneously. Faced with competing colors, sounds, and headlines, the prefrontal cortex, your decision-making center, becomes overloaded. This cognitive fatigue forces the brain into an energy-saving mode, effectively shutting down your motivation to survive the overwhelm. Instead of blaming yourself, you must realize that your mind is exhibiting a drowning response. That hollow feeling of listlessness after 40 minutes is simply your brain's attempt to disconnect from the world to protect its remaining resources.
Evolutionarily, the human brain developed a vital connection between information and survival. For thousands of years, every new stimulus represented either a threat or an opportunity, such as food or shelter. Because of this, our minds are optimized to be hypersensitive and curious about changes in our environment. However, for our ancestors, these stimuli were rare and meaningful, requiring deep focus to track prey or predict a storm. Today, this ancient mechanism is literally under siege by an endless bombardment of notifications, videos, and news. While your brain is still trying to process every ping as survival data, it is experiencing a cognitive short circuit under a data load that far exceeds its biological capacity. The most insidious part of this digital cycle is the micro-dopamine spikes triggered by every scroll. These tiny chemical hits are never strong enough to satisfy you. Instead, they create the illusion that the next reward will be better, keeping you pathologically hooked to the system. Over time, this constant high-intensity stimulation raises the brain's tolerance threshold, causing neurons to desensitize their dopamine receptors as a form of self-protection. Consequently, the natural rhythm of real life, reading a book, having a deep conversation, or simply sitting in silence, starts to feel insufficient and unbearably dull. Your mind becomes a stimulation addict that can only respond to artificial jolts, feeling profound restlessness in the quietude of reality.
This insidious mechanism of the digital cycle functions by manipulating the brain's reward prediction error system. Every time you scroll down a screen, your mind is filled with the anticipation of a potential reward. However, the content provided rarely satisfies that expectation fully. Instead of quenching the dopamine system, this mismatch drives it into a deeper state of hunger. The result is a vicious cycle that lasts for hours, fueled by the primal urge for just one more. In this process, the brain becomes exhausted by the constant stimulation and, in an effort to maintain chemical equilibrium, reduces the sensitivity of its dopamine receptors, a process known as downregulation. This is a form of tolerance similar to substance addiction, where you eventually require more frequent, faster, and more shocking stimuli just to feel a baseline level of engagement.
This biological shift creates an impassable distance between you and the natural, slow rhythm of life. When your dopamine threshold is artificially inflated, the rewards offered by the real world Watching a sunset, solving a complex problem step by step, or drifting quietly into thought are perceived by the brain as insufficient signals. These low-intensity activities no longer provide pleasure. Instead, they create a sense of cognitive void and restlessness. Your mind becomes so accustomed to artificial hyperarousal that the stillness of reality feels like a zone of deprivation. Consequently, the individual transforms into a prisoner of stimulation, someone who only feels normal while staring at a screen, yet remains in a constant state of escapism and fractured focus within real life.
Modern life has constructed an ecosystem of instant gratification, unprecedented in human history, where every desire, be it food, entertainment, or social validation, can be satisfied with a single swipe or minimal effort. Evolutionarily, our brains are programmed to secure the highest reward while expending the least amount of energy to ensure survival. When this efficiency mechanism meets the modern world of comfort, it transforms into a trap. The brain accepts this constant, effortless state of hyperstimulation as its new normal. This recalibrated baseline is so high that any moment without intense dopamine secretion creates a profound sense of void and inadequacy for the mind. When you are in this state, activities that progress slowly, such as studying, focusing on a project, or exercising, feel excruciatingly difficult, not because of a lack of willpower, but due to a biological recalibration. Your brain isn't being lazy when it rejects these tasks. Rather, because it has become accustomed to high-dose stimulation, it perceives these low-dose, beneficial actions as a form of deprivation. In essence, you aren't avoiding effort. Your brain is avoiding the withdrawal symptoms it feels when distanced from that artificial level of arousal. This is an addiction cycle, where your mind compares the patient rewards of real life to the instant hits of the digital world, consistently choosing the easier path and trapping you deep within your comfort zone.
While laziness is often labeled as a character flaw or moral failing, the biological reality is far different. Most of the time, this state is a freeze response from an overloaded nervous system trying to survive. The modern world exposes our minds to thousands of data points, notifications, and artificial stimuli within seconds. Evolutionarily, our nervous system is not equipped for such extreme speed and intensity. When the brain is crushed under this bombardment, it enters a protective shutdown mode. That heavy feeling of listlessness and the inability to take action is actually your mind's way of saying, "I cannot handle anymore." In other words, the problem isn't your character, it's the sheer volume of noise you are enduring.
The way out of this cycle is not to pump yourself with more motivation, but to create a space where your brain can finally breathe. When you reduce external stimuli and noise, your nervous system drops its threat perception and gradually returns to its natural rhythm. Focus is not something that can be forced into existence. It is a natural byproduct that emerges once the mind becomes still. By lowering the level of stimulation, you allow your brain to descend from its hyper-aroused baseline and begin noticing the small, meaningful rewards of real life again. True productivity does not come from pushing yourself harder, but from respecting your brain's biological limits and granting it the silence and emptiness it needs to recalibrate.